Hey, Sean.
Yes, sir, Howard.
How you doing?
Quite well.
We're on the couch, aren't we?
We are on the couch. I love when we do these in-person interviews. They are always quite enjoyable.
Well, we gotta put a warning on today's, right? This story's pretty rough, and any of our listeners out there that may be really sensitive, you might want to just turn this one off. We're going to talk about one of the probably most horrific parts of being a police officer today. So we give you about 2 minutes to turn it off, and then we'll get into this. But today we have a gentleman from Oklahoma, a little place called Ardmore. He says during the day it's got 24,000 people, or during the day it has 50,000 people, and then at night it goes down to 24,000. Mm-hmm. But he is the police chief there, and his name's Kevin Norris. So welcome today, Mr. Norris.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we appreciate you making the trip up. For those that are not familiar with Oklahoma, Kevin, if you don't mind, just kind of give a breakdown the distance between Ardmore and Tulsa, a little trip you made up here today.
We're about 3.5 hours away from Tulsa. We're halfway between Dallas and Oklahoma City, right on I-35. So we're a popular place during the OU Texas football weekend. That is one of the major stopping points for all the OU fans.
Boomer.
Yep.
Use the restroom.
Boomer.
Sitting there. So you actually, the part of this we really enjoy is the drinks, right?
That is it. Conversations are always good, too, but we are a big fan of the drink.
And Kevin brought his own drink today and brought us some.
I did.
Kevin, you want to tell us about this stuff?
Yeah, this stuff is called Alley Tea. It's made by a local restaurant in Ardmore that has been there for many, many, many years, called Cafe Alley. And ever since COVID, they started bottling their famous Alley Tea to go. And I take advantage of it on a regular basis, and it's pretty good stuff.
Well, this is, a first that someone we've been talking with has shown up with drinks not only for themselves but for everybody else. So anybody, we've got several people lined up for the future here. Take note.
That's right.
of the chief here, how he came deep. Howard, break down what's in this bad boy.
We got we got everything in here: vodka, rum, gin, triple sec, Chambord.
Chambord.
I didn't see the D on the side, so it looks like Chambord. Fresh margarita mix and some pineapple juice. Yeah. And when you drink it, it tastes like there's no alcohol in it. So there's the first 4, 9, 6 ingredients are all alcohol. So we're going to test this out. Cheers to you, sir. Let's try these things.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think Jason hit it right on the head. He says like a Long Island iced tea, basically.
Yeah, as long as it's not apple crown.
Yes. Man, speaking of that, really quick before we get into this, just recently I went out to watch Tom Segura, the comedian, do stand-up here in Tulsa. Fantastic. He was at one of the casinos. I'm not a casino guy, but when I was in there, the waitress was asking us what drink we wanted, and I was like, hey, I want a whiskey. My choices were Jack Daniel's Black, Crown, or Crown Apple. That was literally all they had, those three things. So
did you get Crown Apple?
I drank water.
So
no, I did. I had a Jack. But yeah, those were the three. That was it. That's all they had.
Well, they give those drinks away for free. That's why they have to give that shitty whiskey.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yep.
All the Crown drinkers, I apologize, but it's awful.
Yeah.
All right, Kev, how'd you get into being a 5-0?
Well, somebody I worked with when I used to work in the grocery retail. They were a reserve. Their dad was an Oklahoma Highway Patrol trooper and was well known in Love County. His brother-in-law was actually the chief of the Marietta Police Department. Talked me into being a reserve, and once I become a reserve, that was it. I mean, I never once thought in my life that I'd become a police officer whatsoever, and went through the Reserve Academy, and then in 1997, March 3rd, I became a full-time police officer with the city of Ardmore.
How old were you?
I was about 25 or 26. I just turned 50 a couple months ago.
Man, the mirror legitimately with how you your timing and the way you went about it, same thing. I knew I was going to be a cop, but I was a reserve officer here in Tulsa at the time, and that very first ride along I did, even before getting to be a reserve officer, man, you get hooked. And there are so many citizens that they're like, oh, I want to do a ride along. I want to see how the police department. and then they go and there's like, holy shit, man, this job's amazing.
Yeah.
And they get sucked into it. But I was working at a grocery store at the same time. I was going to school, working at the grocery store, so it's kind of funny. And I started in January of '97. I never rose the ranks to police chief, so we see who was motivated and who wasn't.
No,
so
I never thought that I would would do this, because that was not a goal of mine whatsoever. I worked narcotics during late '90s, early 2000s. Ardmore, there was a lot of crack cocaine on the streets, and I got into the narcotics unit and spent a long time there. Worked for the Drug and Violent Crime Task Force for District 20. Well, we worked 5 counties, the height of the cocaine and crack cocaine and the meth lab epidemic, and I took down a lot of meth labs in my time. And I don't know, I always considered myself kind of lack of better words, a door kicker. I was always active, and not once did I ever aspire to be a police chief. It's just something that kind of happened over the years. Kind of thrusted into it whenever I was the interim chief. Actually, whenever this incident happens, I was interim chief, and from that moment on, it all went downhill.
Yeah, talking about it being a door kicker. There was an episode of Live PD. We're going to just throw this thing way out there. There was a guy that was a door licker, and he got caught. No, this is really
like the knob, or
no, dude. He was caught on he was caught on a Ring doorbell. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I know. I've seen it.
Okay. So I'll tell you that some of the stuff that didn't hit the air. He was masturbating, is what he was doing. He was licking the doorknob at this girl's house, and masturbating while caught on the Ring camera. And this thing went on for several minutes, and he was basically like performing oral sex on the doorknob. And that was the power of the delay that Live PD had, that very short delay they had, was we were able to cut that. And he ejaculated in the bush right there on the front door.
The bush.
No, so I swear, guys, this was live on TV. And so he gets caught, and then his picture was out there, and if I remember correctly, his picture was on the show that night, and another agency from either within the same state or a neighboring state of where this happened, somebody was watching it that was in law enforcement, or like, oh, we know exactly who that is. We arrested him up here for the same type of thing. So the guy ended up getting caught right away. So just when you said door kicker, I had to go door licker. But honestly, as Howard pointed out, very serious episode we have here today, and so we do appreciate you being here. And talking about, hopefully we have enough time, not just one incident, but 2 that you and your agency were involved in there.
Yeah, and that kind of leads in. Most people kind of have an idea of what cops do, you watch TV enough. This is what police officers are going to be doing. They're going to be obtaining information about potential door lickers. They're going to be chasing bad guys, going after drugs. But one of the hardest things is crimes against children, huh?
Yeah. It was, and nobody in our agency, we were prepared for what we were going to experience, and especially the aftermath of what it did to a lot of us. Fortunately, at the time I was the captain over investigations and also the interim chief. But prior to that, myself and several members, along with our advocacy center, it was called Sarah's Project now, but it was called See Sarah back then. They sponsored us to go to Crimes Against Children in Dallas. And I would say that if anybody is investigations that has to work crimes against children, they need to go to that conference, because we learned so much. And it's basically, we sat down and it's case studies. And I think that is the best way for officers to learn, is whenever other departments will come in and they will say, hey, this is what we did right, but this is what we did wrong. And you learn from that. And fortunately, this one agency, and I want to say they were out of Washington, they had a kidnapping, a stranger abduction of a child, and they weren't prepared for it. And they had to learn on the fly. And after we attended this Crimes Against Children conference, we come back, myself and an investigator, his name was Billy Turner, and we sat down and we got to come up with a plan. We never know if this is going to happen to us. We hope it never does. But if so, we got to come up with some protocols. So we actually contacted that agency, and they sent us all the paperwork, all the forms, the door-to-door knocks that you do in case this has ever happened, how you would separate the dumping of the trash at the local landfill. Unfortunately, that's what you got to do, because you just never know what you're going to find. you know. And so whenever the day happened, in a way we were ready, and in a way we weren't.
When as you referred to it, the day that it happened, the first incident, what was the difference in time that you went down to this training in Dallas and when this thing actually happened?
I want to say it was about 5 or 6 months at the most. At the most, 5 months. It seems like to me we had just gone through it in July or August before, and we put the kit together and kind of put it on the top shelf. And on Labor Day in 2013, it happened.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing about you have to prepare for all these awful scenarios that go on, whether they happen or not. Unfortunately, you had a plan. Unfortunately, you had to implement that plan because something happened, which, God, Sean and I, having daughters, this is like the worst thing that we can imagine.
Yeah.
We can't even, I can't even put myself in a mind, in a place to have any sort of sympathy for that type of predator. You know, I mean, it's awful.
Yeah. Well, you know, as an officer, you always, some officers, not everybody, but you always, plan for the best, prepare for the worst. You know, whenever I was in narcs and we'd go do dope deals and I'd be buying hand to hand on the street, I always would prepare. What if this guy does this? What am I going to do? What's my out? What's my attack if I have to go on the offensive? And I think to be a good officer, you need a plan. You need to think of the unthinkable, and we don't want to do that. And just, I've got 2 daughters and a son, and granted, right now they're grown. And when this happened, my oldest was in college, and my youngest daughter was in high school. And I would always tell them, and this is maybe a little morbid, but I'm like, you need to prepare if you're ever kidnapped. What are you going to do?
Right.
The fairy's not going to come and sprinkle dust on you, and all of a sudden you're going to remember what you need to do.
And Liam Neeson can't be everywhere.
That's
huh?
right. And so, and fortunately for us, we did, because whenever I got the call on that Labor Day in September of 2013, we kind of had a plan on what we needed to do and how fast we needed to act. And I want to say it was about 9 o'clock in the morning whenever I got the call. And I was off duty at the time because it was a holiday. Unfortunately, I was able to take that day off. And I got my uniform on because the supervisor at the time was an officer who was on light duty. And he told me, he said, Chuck, that's what my nickname was, Chuck, back in the day. And they were like, Chuck, this is for real. We've got a girl that's missing. And the family that they were missing from was well known to the police for not all the good reasons, And they lived in an apartment complex that was not in really a bad part of town. I mean, it was considered a lower income apartment complex, but the area around was nice. The neighborhood just to the east of it was a nice neighborhood. And I'm like, okay, I'll get my uniform on and I'll head in. And so on my way, I got another phone call, and it said the sister, which was a 5-year-old sister of our victim, said this sister was taken by a naked white man. And, unfortunately, the people in the house didn't listen because at about 5 o'clock in the morning, one of the adults had gotten up and had gone to the bathroom and come back in, and the sister told him, he said, a naked white man has taken my sister. And the adult, who was not the mom or dad, but just a family friend, didn't think about it and told her to go back to bed. And he went back to the living room and fell asleep.
So this was 5. You got the call.
We got the call at about 9 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
Yeah. And he was told at 5 o'clock in the morning that the sister had been taken.
And that's crucial. Kind of prior to you coming on here, I did a little bit of research reading about some of the stuff, and there's like a statistic that shows for children stranger abductions, if they're not found like within the first 3 hours, 75% of them typically are found dead.
Yes.
And that's why those hours are so important in the very beginning of a true stranger abduction. Yeah. There's the type of deals with kids where someone leaves their car running, a kid's in the back seat, and the person goes inside the store, then someone jumps in and takes it off. That suspect, their intention is not to kidnap a kid. They just stole a car that has a kid in it. Those things happen, unfortunately, more often than they should. But these guys, usually when they find the kid, they park that damn car and they get away from it. They want nothing to do with it. Obviously, there's the parental, parents are split up. I want the kid, you want the kid. One of them takes the kid type of deal. Again, totally different from a true stranger abduction, which is very rare, luckily. But those hours are so important there in the very beginning.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we learned at Crimes Against Children was the time frame. You know, if this happens, this is how much time you got. If you want to find the children alive, statistically, you need to do it quick, because the longer it goes, the less likely that you're going to find the child alive.
So this family member calls you guys, right? 9 o'clock.
Yeah, they get up. The mom calls and says that their child is missing, and that their the youngest owner, the 5-year-old, is telling them that a naked white guy has taken the child. And so, everybody's converging on the scene. Well, as things go, just so happened that we had a naked white guy with long hair around about 1.5 miles from the location that was found in the middle of the night, and he was taken to the emergency room for an eval. And so they're thinking, well, we've got our suspect right here, And so the officers on the scene, I show up, and right before I got there, they had taken a picture of the guy that they had and doing an emergency eval in the ER, and they sent it. And the officer went to the 5-year-old and said, "Is this him?" And she said, "No, he's bald. It was a naked white man that's bald." And so they're like, "Crap, we don't have many naked white men running around. I mean, how, is she correct?" And so, fortunately, we did have an officer, that was supervising dispatch, so he started checking. And they had found out that there had been reports of a naked white man that had been roaming the apartment complex in days and weeks prior. That one of the occupants that lived there in the apartment complex, they had actually called the management on this person.
As you should.
Yep. And in her words, nothing ever happened. I don't know. It seems like to me that somebody had called because the dispatch supervisor had found it, but I guess we had never found him, or we had knocked on the door and he never answered, or something. And so that was a clue right there, as that this subject in the apartment complex. And so we had to rule out pretty quickly that the guy that was at the ER with the long brown hair and it was naked too is not our guy.
Chief, let me ask you this. You kind of mentioned that this family was known to police to begin with, the victim's family, and not for good reasons. When the call came in about the kid missing, was there in the beginning, initially, hey, man, does parents, someone that's over at this house because of the lifestyle they're living possibly have something to do with the kid missing?
Yeah. Initially we kind of thought, well, they're just not paying attention. You always want to search the house first, because usually you find the kid in the closet, hiding under the bed or something like that, or, knowing this family and the drug activity and stuff in the past, the kid could have left the apartment, And I know the officers got with them and were like, were all the doors locked? And they're like, oh, yeah, all the doors locked. The only way that you could have gotten into the house was through the balcony. But later on we figured out and found out that they had left the front door unlocked, and there were a lot of adults in the living room, and the suspect, he had actually come into the apartment, come to find out he was checking doorknobs, and he opened the door and he come in and he walked right through the living room with all the adults that were in there.
You're fucking kidding me.
No. Nope.
And he was stark naked, right?
Stark naked, yeah.
All right, you got to tell us more about this family, because I think that we like to refer to this as white trash, right?
I would say pretty close. They were known for drug activity and crime. The boyfriend was well known, and I know whenever I was on the street, I even had dealings with him and had dealings with his father, back in the day. And so whenever the call come out and we figured out who the family was, obviously you think, okay, something has happened.
Right.
They've done something.
Right, but I do want to say, regardless, using the term, family's known to it, same type of deal. Being in the gang unit for years, you deal with the same people over and over again. But when they're the victims of a crime, you're going to work it no different than you're going to work anybody else. You work it exactly the same. There's nothing different. like, as my question was, sure, there might be a few other questions you're going to ask in the beginning just because of the lifestyle these people live. But once you find out you've got a true victim crime, you're going to work it.
Yeah, I think
just as you would any other crime.
If it hadn't been for the 5-year-old,
yeah,
we probably would have focused more on the adults.
Sure.
But the 5-year-old sister, to be honest with you, ultimately the 5-year-old sister is who led us in the right direction.
Yeah.
Because she was so
responsible.
Yes, responsible, and she told us.
And sorry to cut you off, Chief. And she herself was assaulted by the guy as well in the house, correct?
Yes. Yeah, she was.
Prior to him taking the sister.
So he come in through the living room, went into the bathroom, just the bedroom, and actually used the bathroom in their house. And he assaulted the 5-year-old, sexually assaulted her, and sexually assaulted the older sister while they were in the residence. And at some point during this, he decided that he was going to take the older sister. He covered the younger sister up with a blanket, and I told her to go back to sleep or something like that. And he carried the 7-year-old out of the apartment.
And the adults were still in the living room?
And the adults were still in the living room and still asleep and never woke up. Yeah. And then at 5 o'clock, like I said, one of the occupants who was not the family, they were just there. They got up, went into the restroom, noticed that the restroom was backed up now or something, and asked the 5-year-old, "Did you go to the bathroom?" 5-year-old, like, "Hey, my sister was taken. A naked white guy took my sister. I go back to bed."
I'll tell you what, the brazenness, or I'll put it bluntly, the balls on somebody to do something like to come. And this is Oklahoma. Everybody has a gun in their house here in Oklahoma, and you step into someone else's house, you're going to get blown out of your shoes, so to speak. So, yeah, that's just
and that's one of the things. Ultimately we questioned it. We questioned that this was a stranger abduction. And we could never find a tie to the suspect and the family. I mean, we looked.
Yeah.
Because it was just so brazen. I mean, who would do that? And then, once we were on scene and we figured out, hey, we've got a suspect here, we actually were able to locate one of the callers of the naked white guy that's been roaming the apartment complex. And so myself and 3 other officers, it was Lieutenant Antoine, Sergeant G, and Corporal Johnson, we went to this lady and we knocked on the door. She opened the door, and we said, "Hey, you've reported a naked white guy." And we're like, "Can you describe him to us?" And she's like, "Yeah, he's tall, he's white, he's bald, and he's been roaming around. I've reported it to the management." And we're like, "Well, where does he live?" "Well, I don't know what happened, but for some reason we went to an apartment right across the hall from her." We knocked on the door, they opened up. We asked, "Hey, can we come in? We're looking for a girl." They said yes. We went in, we looked, it wasn't them, and then she was like, "No, it's over there." And so, which was kind of catty corner from her. And so all 4 of us, we walked up to the door, and in my mind, I'm thinking, we don't even know how many hours have passed.
Right.
We don't know when, because they went to bed, she was there, and we know that time is of the essence, and so we're knocking on the door, nobody's answering, and at some point the subject inside says, "Hello, hey, what's up?" And we say, "Police," open the door, and he didn't answer. They banged on the door again, and we say, "Police, we need you to come to the door." And he says, "I got to get my pants on." Well, right then and there, something in me clicked, and thinking back to the Dallas, the Crimes Against Children conference, all these statistics started going off. You got, this, and this. Usually, statistically, kids aren't taken very far, and so I start, one of the guys is like, "Hey, we can call the maintenance man and have him get a key." And I'm like, I don't think we have time for that. And somebody else is like, "Hey, let's get a search warrant." And I'm like, "No, I ain't got time for that. I think we're going to breach this door. He don't open the door, we're going to breach it." And I'm interim chief at the time, right. And I realize, hey, if we breach this door and there ain't nobody inside there, or this is, somebody, an innocent family like the one we had just gone in, this is probably going to be a big deal for me, but something in my gut was telling me, and you know, when the hair stands up on the back of your neck, you got to listen, you know. And so I told him we're going to breach it, you know. And me, I don't have much lead in my butt, and so the other guys, you know, they started kicking the door, and we breached it. And the suspect had actually put a couch up against the door. He had put knives in the door frame, I guess, trying to jar the door shut. And I was number one in the stack, and you know, my cover guy was behind me. And whenever we went into the apartment was completely dark. I did have a flashlight, but we didn't realize at the time when we first went in, because we made a dynamic entry, and I ran into the couch, and somebody behind me ran into me. And whenever I went in, I hit that couch and I bent over and I looked up. And about that time, I see a dark figure run across the room. But then I see, and I had a really hard time with this for a long time. I saw her standing in the room, and he had blacked out all the windows. He had blacked out the sliding door to the balcony. It was completely dark, and she's just standing there. And it was her, because of the picture that they had given us, you know, and she was standing there in the dress. And so we went past, because we were going toward the figure. We figured that was the suspect. And he actually went into a bathroom and shut the door. Again, you know, I kicked the door once, couldn't get it open. I think it was Officer Johnson. He busted the door, actually broke it in half. It was a typical apartment hollow core door, you know.
Right.
And I went into the bathroom, and to grab him, and I went around and kind of button hooked there just a little bit. Well, he was trying to shoot himself up with a deal of methamphetamine. He had a syringe in his hand. And Johnson and Antoine, they took a hold of him and pulled him out of the bathroom. The water was running in the tub. I immediately went out, and I grabbed a hold of her, and I took her. And, you know, and that was another thing for a long time. And, that, you know, I know that y'all have talked about this on past episodes, but the things that officers deal with is different for everybody else, you know. And for me, it was her picture in my mind, seeing her in that dark room. That was something that haunted me for a long time afterwards. And I just couldn't get it out of my head, you know. And then, but another thing that bothered me was the fact that I passed her up. Rather than, I was number one, I didn't take her and hold her and walk out, but I passed her off down the line, you know. And whenever I went out, because they were cuffing him up because he was fighting a little bit, I grabbed a hold of her, radioed that we had found her, and I stepped outside. Well, the whole family is down at the bottom of the steps, you know, and I'm like, everybody stay away.
Right.
Because I'm thinking DNA, you know.
Of course.
There's no telling what's going on. And
Preserve evidence.
Yeah. And I was going to have to get her somewhere, but there. Yeah.
Man, so, you know, and you did hit right on it. There's things, and I mean, you've been in law enforcement, you said, since 97, so 25 years now.
Yeah.
And it is just as you point out, we've talked about in other episodes, how there's these little things that just could happen in year one, could happen in year 10, 20, you know, 25, these type of things that stick with you. And I think, you know, you bypassing the victim, obviously that's the priority on, you know, anything like that, but that's just the cop inside of you.
Yeah.
Also, it's, you know, get the fucking bad guy.
Yeah.
Get the guy responsible for this. Once you guys got him into custody, and there was an interrogation that happened later, I think one of your corporals, from my understanding, is the one that kind of was the lead investigator. And I guess before we even get to the interview and the prosecution and stuff like that, how far away was the suspect's apartment and the victim's?
The next building.
Wow.
The building next door.
And she was reported missing, and you got the call at 9.
Yeah.
What time did you breach that door?
It was about 9:25. I mean, it was pretty quick.
That fast. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, it goes back to just like you were saying. Obviously, the school you went down, you know, there in Texas, you learned from another agency that did things well, you know, and made mistakes. And just talking about breaching the door, for those of us, you know, those are the listeners that don't know, there's obviously the Fourth Amendment, which is, you know, illegal search and seizure. There are what we call exigent circumstances to it that do allow police to do this. And I looked at this case, and I know that was something that I'm not a big fan of defense attorneys.
Yeah.
I will say this: I understand the system. I believe in our system 100%. But guys that obviously we have to operate within the law,
Mm-hmm.
us as far as police officers. But some of these defense attorneys, they take it so personal that they want to just beat the cop in their case. On a case like this, I know that was something they try to challenge.
They did.
Was you making that decision to kick this door?
And that's fast forwarding quite a bit, but whenever I finally got on the stand, when it finally went to trial and the defense attorney come after me, that's what they come after me about, was the exigent circumstances, and and it's hard, and you always realize on you can't say experience, but you can say training,
right?
Because I never experienced an actual stranger abduction prior to this, and so I just went on my training and my gut and what told me, and then when you breach the door and she's standing there, defense attorney, there's not much you can say, but they did go after that, and fortunately they lost, but whenever I took the victim and I grabbed a hold of her and I jumped in the car, I had to straight to the emergency room. I walked into the emergency room and I said, "Hey, this is our kidnapped victim." They didn't have the slightest idea what I was talking about,
Right.
And I'm like, I need to have her put somewhere. They didn't have any idea, and so I got on the phone and called our advocacy center, and they said, take her to the office. We'll be there in a minute. And I tell you what, that was one of another hard time, was sitting there in the car waiting for them to get there with her in the passenger seat, and she was wanting to talk to me, and she was wanting to tell me all about it. He took me, he did bad things to me. I'm like, hey, what are you going to wear for Halloween?
Right.
October.
God,
Trying to change the subject. And coming with having daughters, that's rough.
Sure. Sure.
And then the advocacy center, they come and they got her and they took care of her, and they, I ended up going back. They were serving the search warrant on the place, and one of the things, whenever we did breach the bathroom door and they took him into custody, one of the officers, and I think it was Lieutenant Antoine, he asked about turning off the bathtub because the bathtub the water was running in it and it was almost full, and I was like, yeah, go ahead and turn it off. Well, let's say we've searched the house and there was a big old suitcase in there. There was a knife in the door, and during her interview at the advocacy center, she talked about a knife that I think it was a red handle, that he held to her throat while he was, sexually assaulting her.
Jesus.
And that red handled knife was found in the door. And then he was interviewed twice, the suspect was, and Turner interviewed him both times. And during the interview, he ultimately admitted that the bath water, he was going to wash her, because he knew at some point he was going to have to get rid of her, and he was going to wash her up, and he was going to dispose of her. And near the apartment complex, there was a pretty big pond, and that he was either going to put her in the pond or the river, which the river would have been the Red River,
Right.
And that was his plan. And he told the investigator that if the officers had not have come in when they did, she would have been dead, because he would rather have gone to prison for killing a kid than just for kidnapping and raping them, because he knew what would happen to somebody whenever they go to prison.
Jesus. So I got to roll back. Defense attorney, was this a public defender, or did somebody willingly take this case?
I think it was a public defender. I think it was. It was a female, and really, whenever I got on the stand, and I actually broke down on the stand, and my wife can tell you, there were many a times that on this case I broke down, many a times thinking about it, because that image just haunted me, And it wasn't until I went to another Crimes Against Children conference after that I sat in on a guy. He was a probation and parole officer, but yet he studied sex offenders and stuff like that, and he talked about how the mind works and how the mind actually takes pictures. It takes pictures,
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you have to reevaluate the picture, and that's what I did. I reevaluated the picture, that not her as a victim. I mean, she was a victim, but that she was being rescued at that moment.
Yep.
And that helped me kind of deal with it. And, the defense attorney come after me pretty hard on the stand before the decision I made. But, it is what it is. He's doing, I think I figured up, it was like 200 years.
Yeah, he got life.
Yeah, and so she had a rough go. ultimately, in the long run, her and all her siblings were removed from the home.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, and ultimately, she was adopted, and I was invited to the adoption hearing, which was really nice. There were about 25 or 30 people that were involved in that. You know, everybody that had a part in her rescue, the advocacy center, the DHS, and all that. And you know, we learned that this is not something that we want to do. We never want to have to deal with this, but you know, we were prepared, and we got it done. And we learned how to deal with everything.
Well, what was this? And obviously, the guy, the naked man walking around, some screws were loose for sure,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What was, when you went to this interview, what did he say his motivation was? What
It
was
was-
this just a crime of opportunity for
It
him?
was 100% methamphetamine and pornography. That's what it was, because actually the victim, she actually said during her interview that at one point while he was sexually assaulting her, he was talking about her mother. So he had obviously seen her mother at some point, and the things that he wanted to do to her mother while she was doing them to her.
Good Lord.
And I don't want to give this shitbird's name out there. Like you said, he's in prison for life.
His name's Fucker.
Yeah. Did did he have prior criminal history, anything like this?
Just minor.
Small stuff.
Yeah. Actually, whenever I afterwards we looked on the DOC website, he didn't have anything. You know, if he had anything, it was really minor. He really wasn't known too well with law enforcement at all.
Yeah, I kind of made some notes when I was looking them up and just kind of reading about it. The prosecution, they called 11 witnesses to the stand. Obviously, you being one of the big ones here, the defense attorney tried to go after. But from my understanding on the case, once the prosecution rested, which would have been time for the defense to do their portion of the case, the suspect actually ended up pleading guilty.
Yeah.
I think the evidence was before him.
Yeah.
They were probably hoping to get, if they could have got the
Entry.
Fourth Amendment issue, I mean, that changes things. And that's
Yeah,
what's
it does.
crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't take away what he did, but it makes you guys
Yeah.
finding him, makes the fruit of the poisonous tree,
Yep. And-
the evidence found after.
And a lot of what I did was just relied on the training that I'd got, and I
Yeah.
wrote it in my report, and that's what I testified on because it was true.
Right.
You know?
No, absolutely.
And the training and experience is a big thing when it comes to officers.
Mm-hmm.
So you went, I assume you shared this case as well at this
We
conference
did, yeah.
afterwards?
This case, and unfortunately, we had a second abduction about 14 months later. But a few years down the road, we were actually invited to come down. Myself, Billy Turner, and the director for the Advocacy Center, we were invited to come to Against Crimes Against Children, and we did what the agency before us did. We stepped in, we gave a full brief on what we did right and what we did wrong, and it was pretty powerful. And then afterwards, I had people contacting us, wanting all the forms and stuff and what we did, and we sent it to them. And hopefully it never happens. But if it does, somebody's ready to go.
Hey, Chief, we've got, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes or so till we have to wrap this up. And I do want to jump into the other one that happened. And I hate to even do it in 10 minutes. But when you said things you did wrong, to get that call, show up at 9 o'clock and 9:25, you guys are holding this little girl. There's a
pretty
whole
damn
lot of
good.
things that went right.
Yes, yeah.
What is it that doing it over again you do differently? What would you call did wrong?
In that one, we really didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
Everything went right. It was the second one where we kind of messed up. And the only thing that I can see that we really messed up on, the suspect, I mean, it was broad daylight in the afternoon. There were literally, it was daylight in a neighborhood, just middle of Ardmore, with a lot of people around. This guy was brazen enough to take, I think she was 6 or 7 at the time.
Right.
And what we did wrong at that point was we were told that the suspect vehicle was a PT Cruiser, and that's what we honed in on, was PT Cruiser. And ultimately, in the long run, it was found to be an HHR.
Very similar looking.
Yeah.
Very similar looking.
If it hadn't been for a 13-year-old boy that witnessed the abduction and some other people it was brazen. It was broad daylight. We actually had this 13-year-old juvenile come in and sit down with our CSI, and she actually did a sketch on our suspect, and it was a profile that this kid had seen from about 40 yards away. And a couple of other people saw. One saw that he was wearing glasses. And he did the sketch. And whenever it come down to it, we ultimately, in the next morning, we got a tip. And it come in, and the dispatcher, we did everything that we were taught at Crimes Against Children. We had a tip box, we had a bad tip, we had a good tip. We had it all set out. We had called the FBI in. We called to NCMEC, which was National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And we had this guy in the middle of the night show up, and we're like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "I'm from NCMEC. I'm here to do whatever you need me to do." And he just sat in the corner, which was pretty amazing. And we honed in on that PT Cruiser, and I actually had the OSBI run PT Cruisers for the entire Carter County. Ultimately, the next morning we had a tip come in from a lady that says, "Hey, my nephew worked with a guy that drove a HHR, silver in color. He was weird. He doesn't have any kids. He bought a kid's bike. He bought zip ties. Gave us his name, and I looked at it. And we actually, me and it was Matt Dunn, Billy Turner, and some others, we looked his Facebook profile up. And we looked at his Facebook profile, and we looked at the drawing, and we're like, holy crap. The profile picture of the drawing and the Facebook profile, we're like, this could be our guy. And so Detective Dunn and Billy, they actually went down to Marietta, which is south of Ardmore, about 15 miles. We had called them and said, "Hey, go to this address," because we found his address, and we're like, "Set up and tell us if this HHR is parked in the driveway and if it's dirty," because one of the other kids said, "Hey, it's a silver car, but it's really muddy." Well, they called us back, and they were like, "Yeah, it's dirty," and we're like, "Hold on a second." We get there, and they drove down there. They knocked on the door, and a lot of things have happened through the night. We had gotten pretty, because it didn't happen as quick as the first time, and we were kind of losing hope in it. And the guy actually opened the door just a little bit. Dunn was talking to him at the door. He said, "Hey, I need you to come out. We need to talk to you." And, "What for? Why do you want me to come out?" Well, Billy walked up, and Billy was involved in the first one, at interviewing him. And Billy had gone to the Crimes Against Children conference, and Billy was like, "We need to talk to you about a missing kid." And right then his facial expression changed. And Billy knew, and he tried to shut the door on him, and fortunately Dunn had put his foot in the threshold. And so they forced the door open. Well, unbeknownst to them, he was holding a 12-gauge shotgun behind the door.
Damn.
And Billy grabbed a hold of that shotgun, and they went to the floor fighting over the shotgun. And one of the officers ran to the back because they had heard footsteps. And one of the other officers from the agency had tasered the guy while they're fighting over the gun. And the girl was in the back, and they got her. And Billy took hold of her because he was involved in the first one. And then he drove her up to the advocacy center, and she was rescued. The first suspect in the first kidnapping, he admitted during his interview that he was going to clean our first victim up, and then he was going to put her in the suitcase, and he was going to dump her. Our second suspect, he admitted that because he had shaved her head, he wanted to keep her because he loved her, and he was going to keep her for a while. And we actually had neighbors that had said that he was brazen enough that he actually let her ride the bicycle out in public. But he had actually cleaned out one of the closets. He had a weight bench put in there, and that was the only thing in there. And our CSI, they found a shock dog collar. He didn't have a dog.
God damn it.
Pornography, which he wasn't really a drug user. He had used pills for depression or something, but he wasn't into meth like the first one, but he was into heavy pornography. And both of them had actually made our victims watch pornography to try and groom them a little bit, which a lot of them do.
How long did he have her? Wasn't it something? It was still less than a day, though.
It was
right?
less than a day. It was less than 24 hours. I want to say it was about 16 to 18 hours. Yeah.
And listeners, people, everyone's obviously familiar with the Amber Alert, and the first one, you're talking 30-minute time frame. Were you guys even able to get an Amber Alert out? How about the second one?
We did, because actually I and my family were in Tulsa at Broken Arrow at my mom's. Our whole family got together for Thanksgiving when they called me. And I sat there for a little bit, and I told my family, hey, I'm sorry, but I got to get back to Ardmore. And as we're driving back to Ardmore, I'm seeing the Amber Alert
On the boards.
On the boards, yeah.
Yeah, and for the people that don't know, the Amber Alert, there's criteria that that's required for those of us in law enforcement to put one out. It has to be a stranger abduction. We have to have information on a victim as a possible suspect. We have to believe the person's in danger and so forth. And I didn't know this until prior to you coming here. Obviously familiar with the Amber Alert. We all get the alerts on our phone. We see them on the boards, as you mentioned, scrolling across what they call the chyron on the bottom of a television. But here in January that just passed, that's the 26th year from when the Amber Alert started. And there was a girl, first name was Amber, that was actually kidnapped in Arlington, Texas. And she was found 4 days later dead. She was out riding her bike when she was kidnapped. And they kind of used, the acronym for her name, Amber, and it's America's Missing Broadcasting Emergency Response. And you may have known that from the school you went to.
I did not know what it stood for. Yeah.
So that's where the actual name is. I knew it was named after somebody. And what it was, when she went missing down there, a woman that lived in the Arlington area contacted a local radio station of, hey, why can't we put this information out that she's missing? And the radio station was like, man, that's a great idea. And within that calendar year of 1996, the Amber Alert was basically created. And I think now, obviously, it's in all 50 states. I think I read that it's in, 33 other countries use the same thing. And since its inception in 1996, they give credit to 1,085 kids as of January of this year that have been found safe because of an Amber Alert. And obviously the second one you're talking about was another one of these incidents. The Amber Alert was out there, and a friend of a friend or relative of a friend that says, hey, go look at this guy. And that's how important something like that, is to the public and those of us in law enforcement.
One of the things that we always say is, if you see something, say something.
100%.
If this lady had not have said anything, sometimes people think they're bothering the police.
Right.
They're not bothering the police,
Never.
And fortunately, the dispatcher, whenever she took the tip, she knew what to do with it, and come straight to me about it. Ultimately, because we did the Amber Alert and we got Nick Mick involved, Matt Dunn and Billy Turner, they actually were awarded an award in Washington, D.C., because of their actions and following the proper protocol, because they told us, they said, very few times does this ever end when you actually find the victim alive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say this. We've had a few, obviously, here in Tulsa, legit kidnappings. And some of them have been the kid that's in the backseat of the car that's stolen type of deal. But when one of those calls goes out, the Amber Alert goes out, you're talking about you being in Broken Arrow. Obviously, you're in a position of, a supervisor at that point, so you're heading back to Ardmore. But every single officer, that's even if they're off duty, when it involves a kid, man, they are blowing their supervisors up. They are blowing dispatch up. Hey, where can I come in at? Where do you need me? To come in on those type of things that involve kids.
Yeah.
Well, Chief, we really appreciate you here today. I think the thing that we can take away from this more than anything is, this is all horrible, but there's good people out there, and the police forces that are out there protecting the most innocent of us.
Yeah, and I will say this, sometimes it's hard for us to believe that people do their time. They do the crime, they do the time. But one of the witnesses in the second victim was actually a sex offender that had actually come forward and gave a statement, and we actually awarded him, along with the juvenile and a couple others, an award from the city of Ardmore for stepping up.
Wow.
And I think that was important. That's hard for us.
No, it is.
But we had to swallow it and say, hey, he did what was right.
Right, right. And I know this is a whole podcast we could probably have talking about sex offenders and the convictions for who's convicted for this, as opposed to someone who's a true pedophile,
right.
Things like that. There's a big difference. I mean, and again, I am not a child sexual assault expert or anything like that. But to me, somebody who is a true pedophile that is finds sexual gratification in kids, that never changes.
Right.
I mean, that's just as much as Howard's into redheads. Those guys are they're into children, and that doesn't change. As opposed to like I said, there's some other different people that get sexual assaults that because of a statutory type of thing, that's just, blah, blah, blah. But no, that's good for someone to step up like that for sure.
Yep, and that's the only thing that saved her was the public.
Yep.
And you guys, don't sell
That's
it
true.
short.
That's true.
25 minutes, 14 hours, you guys are still saving kids. That's pretty awesome. Well, Chief, it was an honor to have you on today. Thanks for sharing your story.
I appreciate it so much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and tell the Cafe Alley anytime
Yeah,
anybody
good.
from that place makes a trip up to Tulsa to bring a case.
That's good stuff.
Well, this is good. This is
I'm
really
telling you,
good.
it's good
We
stuff.
might not get off the couch.
I say two of these will get you in trouble.
Yeah, they will.
How many more you got here?
Yeah, what's in the
How many
bag?
more do you guys bring?
Get some coolers over there.
All right. Well, that closes it. That's it for us. So, Chief, again, thanks for coming up, buddy.
Thank you.
Take care.